This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the Antoine Dupont of website builders.
The great teams are so often reflections of their key players. The 2015 All Blacks were like a mirror held up to Dan Carter, a near flawless competitor born to be champion. JPR Williams personified the 70s Wales side, hard as nails, determined to win, yet gloriously skillful. 03 England were focus channeled just like Johnny. Campo captured what made Australia great, so cocky, his belief that nobody could ever beat them manifested into reality. And when looking at the greatest team of the modern game, whilst we could easily single out a dozen different world-class South Africans, and that's just the second rows, only one man, for me, truly defines, personifies, and reflects this current 2019 to 2023 Springbok team. Because, much like the side he plays for, I don't think I've ever seen a rugby player better at or more built for winning World Cups than Handre goddamn Pollard. Sia might be the Boks' most important player and Etzebeth their best, but no man has the Razzie and Jacques DNA pumping through their veins quite like Handre, an architect on the field who constructs wins like skyscrapers with vision, calm, and his own unscrupulous style. To look back over Handre Pollard's career is to review dozens of semis and finals, moments of destiny for any other player dispatched as if they were nothing, taken in his stride, a rare player whose greatest attribute is the game's most important skill. He wins. So, what makes the Springbok number 10 so special, so good? Why is he so effective in knockout rugby in particular? And where does he deserve to rank amongst the greatest fly halves of all time? Handre Pollard has been a fixture on South African rugby's annual list of winners and riders since Craven Week in 2007, where this enormous 12-year-old ousted the more hyped up Jean-Luc Duplessis on his way to winning the under-13s title before coming back a few years later to guide Western Prophets to another final at under-18s level, now as captain. The years between this had made Pollard a big name in local Cape Town rugby. However, that started to spread further, as, age 15, during an academy game against the Bulls, Pollard caught the eye of their then coach, Heineke Meyer. Despite not being rated as number 1 age grade 10, Meyer liked what he saw and bet the house, making a huge move for Pollard, one of the biggest in South African schoolboy rugby ever, the moment he turned 18, signing him for the Bulls and enrolling Pollard at the University of Pretoria. However, it didn't start as perhaps Meyer expected, with Pollard starting the season in the seconds, with Philly Duplessis and Tiaan Schumann, now of the Netherlands national team, and Newcastle Falcons, starting above him. Pollard would make the bench a few weeks into the season and wouldn't make his first Varsity Cup start for the Tuks until their 5th game of a 9-match season, where from there he would go on to finish the competition the second top point scorer in the whole competition, including 19 points in the semi and 17 points in the finals. He brought home gold in his debut season, having started every game since his debut. This winning, this knockout rugby is just in Handre Pollard's blood. Throughout his career to date, Pollard has played 32 games of knockout rugby, and his team have won 26 of them, playing 8 different sides, yet all handed a player with an incredible record at the moments where it mattered most. You can find perfect examples of Pollard's tightness prowess in both semi-finals the Springboks played on their winning World Cup runs. The first half in 2019 was almost impossibly cagey, a 40 minutes with enough box kicks to kill Stuart Barnes to evenly match teams with similar game plans slugging off for a full game. During the half, Pollard scarcely touched the ball, just 2 or 3 times. His involvement's instead more like this, the way he scans the Welsh defence and orders his own teammates around in real time in total control, allowing Faf de Klerk to just reach into the ruck and pass, and his forwards to just find shape and carry. No need to make decisions, look up, assess anything. He keeps the process fluid, keeps everything running, and prevents anyone losing shape or losing pace. But perhaps a better showcase of his without the ball prowess comes here, as Faf de Klerk sets up to kick, but he gets a call last second from Pollard to play one more phase down the short side. Anticipating the kick, Wales have dropped 5 players into the backfield, most notably Josh Adams on this touchline, which leaves the entire front row here defending the wing alone without Adams in position out wide. Pollard spots this, and so calls South Africa to play an extra phase of crash-up, taking 2 props out the game and leaving Ken Owens here defending the wing alone. Spotting Nkosi return to position against an isolated hooker, Adams sprints up from the backfield to cover, leaving the area where de Klerk is about to kick now unmarked. Nkosi recovers the ball, all because Pollard's split-second spot from half a field away took his opposition player out of the game. In the second half, with Wales having set into a kicking and defensive pattern that was largely neutralised in the box, Pollard retired the quarterback role and started to bring himself more actively into the game. Instead of a box kick or long clearance here, he goes for an absolutely perfectly weighted bomb to clear his own 22, and Nkosi once again able to get under it, or here, dropping into the pocket for the bomb before switching up against the grain, catching Cymru out wide for this lovely would-be 50-22 nowadays. And likewise, in 2023, after emerging from the bench after half-time with the box 6 points behind, he went right back to his old tricks, turning this bomb again here into a scuttering kick over Stewart's shoulder, catching him out, trying to exploit how much of the backfield England like to use him to cover, or here playing one phase in field to shorten up the English line before calling the ball on himself. Stood flat, bait, fully aware of how Farrell and Laws here love to fly up and make a big hit, which will, in turn, if two players are flying out of line, prevent the English line from drifting properly, so stopping anyone getting across the wing, allowing him to Alicia Diinka it over to the touchline for Colby, who creates the best chance of the game up to that point for Villiers-Leroux. However, whilst he's a brilliant kicker, tackler, passer, the whole lot, you can go on and on, the most impressive part of Pollard's game has always been his instincts. Before last year's semi-final against England, he spoke of how he views pressure games as the highlight of his job, as the thing he plays for. And there's no player in the world better at letting that pressure channel through him and convert into a pitch-perfect decision than Pollard. Here, for instance, during the semi-final last year, he has a huge range of website builders that he could choose from, yet he decides to go to Squarespace. He's fully aware of their new Fluid engine, knows it will give him ultimate and easy control over building a website, integrating features, be they social media, a storefront, videos, anything he wants at all in the entire world. He weighs up all these other options, he looks at them all, he assesses them all while Faf de Klerk got the ball. But ultimately, there's only really one on the table, only one he can go for. And he makes that count with Squarespace. It's a quick and easy start, that website put together and ready to go and be published in less than an hour. And, because he's a particularly bright and together boy, he's even got a spare bit of knowledge hanging over from Craven Week that indeed, if he types in the offer code, Squid Rugby, he can save himself some money. And indeed, if you want to do exactly the same, you can head to the link in the description to do exactly what Handre would do, channel that energy into making a website. Perhaps the best demonstration of this came during that England semi-final. With the try in the bag, South Africa now need one more score, any score, to take the lead, and as England pin them into run 22, Pollard doesn't panic. Knowing time is of the essence yet still on their side, he keeps this huge clearance in field. England's conservative tactics mean they're likely to kick the ball back from any unstructured situations, and sure enough, shortly enough, Kerr thumps it long. England happy to let South Africa call the mark and run the clock down, and hence, when Handre does, they're unfussed. And yet, Handre has a plan. Faf, Villy, Bongi all come over to discuss what they should do and suggest perhaps considering a scrum from a mark. But Pollard likes the angle, likes his chances, and backs his instincts. He puts everything in it, aiming for the corner and tells Faf to chase like hell. De Klerk manages to reach Stewart as he leaves his own 22, hence hanging the ball immediately and leaving it hung on around halfway, meaning if the Boks can catch this, we're looking at almost exactly 50-metre net gain from Pollard's position 2 kicks ago. England, however, do recover, but soon enough, Farrell thumps it long, happy once again to concede a free kick to run the clock down. This time, however, the angle isn't great. However, Pollard rushes in with the opposite call. Take the scrum. South Africa still have 6 minutes to manufacture a scoring opportunity, and that is plenty enough. Playing off a scrum here ties in all 8 forwards, hence forcing England to bring the backs up into defensive position in the main line instead of in the backfield, unlike off a mark where they can cover far back as they like. And it allows Pollard to once again look to isolate Stewart. The ball bounces. Stewart, under pressure, once again, slices his kick with 3 Boks there before anyone else in white. The knock-on comes. Springboks scrum is awarded, and the atmosphere in the stadium changes as everyone knows what's coming. Oxenshea ekes out the penalty, and Handre Pollard steps up. If you asked any other player, nailing a difficult penalty in the dying minutes to put your team into a World Cup final would be a moment of destiny that their career would be defined by. If you asked Handre Pollard about it, he'd say, "Which one do you mean, yeah?" Only in a South African accent. Over the last 4 years, Handre Pollard's overall goal-kicking percentage has been around 74%. Yet, in the knockouts of the 2023 Rugby World Cup, his goal-kicking record was 100%. I was surrounded by South Africans in the Stade de France for this decisive shot, and yet I don't think a single person in this entire stadium expected him to miss. There was no doubt. While others feel nerves, Pollard channels concentration. In fact, there's a broad trend over Pollard's full career. From every random example we went to, the closer the game, the higher his kicking percentage. It's hard to analyse mentality from clips and watching games alone, but that semi-final gave us a pretty clear comparison between Pollard and a different outstanding fly-half in Manie Lebok, who's a brilliant talent, but when it comes to knockout rugby, no one is quite Pollard. Lebok infamously crooked after just half an hour, during which he touched the ball 9 times. Pollard, playing 20 minutes more than him during a period where South Africa had considerably more possession, had just 4 more involvements with 13 touches over his 50 minutes. It's easy to praise what a player does when they have the ball or they're in defence, but so much of why Pollard is a brilliant knockout rugby player comes from what he does in other situations when he doesn't have the ball. Pollard's first involvement of the game after coming onto the pitch is to rush in and clear out a ruck here, and his second is here to override Reinach's call. The scrum half is about to pass to him, and instead he asks his 9 to kick himself. Daly has rushed up to try and cover a bomb coming off 10, and that leaves him out of position for a Boks kick, meaning he has to track backwards, dropping the ball and leaving England under huge pressure. The Boks turn it over, and soon enough they draw the penalty, which Pollard bolts over for free points. If you're commentating on the players actually touching the ball, actually being directly involved, Pollard's name probably isn't said an awful lot. It isn't particularly notable here until he actually bangs the penalty over. But if you look at the players who make the biggest difference, who contribute the most to this being 3 points instead of being English ball in their own half, Handre Pollard is well up that list. Contrast that to Boks happily taking kicks like this on himself despite any pressure being on him, sticking to the plan instead of a simple scan to change the script, as well as the chat that Pollard brings to a team, constantly weighing things up, changing his opinion and expressing it to the whole team, yet so clearly. That kind of vision to spot the wingers moving slightly, so therefore the bet of kicking off 9 than off 10, which was the plan, might not make much of a difference in a match finishing 43-20, but in a World Cup semi-final, when one drop ball can change every player on the pitch's lives, Pollard's vision combined with his total lack of ego makes him one of a kind, especially once you then throw in his brilliant skill set and bloody 70-metre boot. Most big game player type fly halves, likes of Dan Biggar, Bowden Barrett, Owen Farrell, are all guys who want the ball, who take the game by the scruff of the neck and do it themselves. Pollard, on the other hand, sole focus is not on who wins man of the match, but who wins the game. Always looking at opposition players, always looking at his own teammates, and always making the correct decision. It's a habit he got into young. Handre won his first cap in 2014, starting the second test against Scotland, having been unavailable for the first because he was starting at 10 in the Junior World Cup final the day before. He'd made just 2 starts in professional rugby up to that point for the Bulls, but had already undergone quite the career as an age grade player. 2 years earlier in 2012, and let me know if this sounds familiar, he entered the Junior World Championship as the reserve to a more attacking-minded starting 10, in this case Tony Yankees, Elton Shipbrother, who's now playing his rugby in Spain. However, after a loss to Ireland in the pool stage, Pollard was parachuted in for a rout the following week, and then just kept the shirt from there. His 100% goal-kicking playing a key part in a critical win over England to put them into the next round, leading ultimately to a final against New Zealand, where Pollard wore the 10 jersey. Without doubt in the coach's mind. Pollard was just 18 years old when he started his first major world final, and the truly remarkable thing about him in that game versus him in the 2023 World Cup final is how close to the finished product he was, even back then, even that young, at 18 years of age. There's some lovely attacking play here, having a direct hand in 2 tries, but the key moment comes here, with the lead just 1 point and clock ticking down. This enormous belter of a drop goal sails right over from distance and angle, catching England off guard, a moment incredibly similar to one he'd recreate in 2015, and one that earmarked him as someone for the world, not just the inhabitants of Somerset West and generally Cape Town, to watch, as well as perhaps the moment that won South Africa their first ever junior world title. Pollard, a critical player throughout the entire campaign. He would go on to play in 3 more Junior World Cups, the following year knocked out in the semis by a late kick from Sam de Pompadour for Wales. Thank you, Sam Davis, what a guy. The moment that he would very much get revenge for, and then some down the line. And then in another beautiful parallel to his senior career, facing England a year later, captained by Mauro Itoje in the 2014 World Cup final. South Africa lost by 1 point, something he'd put right in his senior career, and Pollard got stepped by Nick Tompkins repeatedly, but Heineke Meyer, now coach of the South African national team, had seen enough. He took one more look at Pollard and drafted him in immediately. Pollard played 71 minutes on debut, the longest stint on the pitch of his pro career up to that point, and he delivered a game full of lovely touches, such as this early pass giving Peterson the time to hit a gap and drop it onto the toe to set up a brilliant try for Mvovo. Or here, he sends Serfontaine into the carry, knowing it'll tie in the most agile Scottish defenders. Berger then runs a superb line to kill the Scottish fold here, and the space opens up. Pollard could, here, crash over for a debut try, but instead gives the pass to Peterson. That lack of ego, that selflessness, and that brilliant awareness of every player on the pitch from both sides turns a 60% score for himself into a 100% score for LaRue in the corner. It's the exact DNA of how Handre runs a game today. Every decision is weighed up, deliberate, carried out with the sole goal of winning the game. No consideration for who plays the final part in that task of moving the rubber egg into the end zone or who knocks over the kick itself. After that first start, Pollard never returned to the Bulls bench again, starting every appearance until he left to make $1 million off Montpellier. When asked why he threw him in at the deep end, Meyer said he understood Pollard the moment he saw him play for the first time as a 15-year-old. The more pressure he's under, he said, the more he'll excel. Handre is going to be a world-class player. He wasn't wrong. For so long as I live, I'll swear by my stance that Pollard should have been man of the match in the 2019 World Cup final. I will die on that hill. It was a near-perfect performance, his goal-kicking destroying English morale as he just joined up every other aspect of Springbok play in between pot shots at goal. Here, Lou de Jager is lacking a tip-on option, making him an easier target for a big English shot, though still not an easy target, like he's still Lou de Jager. So Pollard fills in himself on his tip-on line here, around the back, but breaks off last second, turning a standard pod smash-up job into a tiny overlap, getting them to within 5 metres of the try line. A few moments later, he makes this gorgeous leap through the air to regather his own kick and set up the position for the opening 3-point score, starting the game as they mean to go on. It was a brilliant, blustful, uncompromising performance from a fly half. The sort that World Cup finals require, taking the game, putting his stamp on it, and letting everyone know it was his. 2023, however, required a more subtle approach, but Pollard played it perfectly. Once again, his goal kicking was sublime, but his tactical work was also exceptional. This bomb exploits a blind spot in the Kiwi defence, nobody in position without backtracking, something they'd fall into quite often, and he spots it instantly, leading to a loose ball Geordie Barrett has to thump into touch without much gain, giving the Springboks a line out in the All Black 22. Handre Pollard is the best player in the world at hanging up bombs. And whilst the easy thing to think on that is, he gets a lot of height on it, he kicks it really well, he kicks it really accuracy, a huge component of why Pollard is so good at this is shown in this final by the way he scans using the defence for not just catchers, but blockers. The old cliche goes, the kick is only as good as the chase, and no one's kicks are more chaseable than Handre Pollard's. If a team has plenty of blockers in place, he adapts his kick instantly. He's become the master of pinpointing a route for his chasers to get into position. There's nobody better ensuring a good chase than Pollard. Here he starts flat, not really in kicking position, but backtracks as the ball comes out himself, meaning the black backfield isn't really set. Talleyr's still up flat. And as the ball goes over his head, he has no idea where he's going. He's not far enough back to regather the ball himself, and yet he's had no time to adapt and run any kind of block, giving Aronsa a perfect route to get in Bodie's eye line. Just jumping, getting his eye line, causing a knock on from Barrett. However, it gets better. Because Rieko Ioane was involved in chasing the last kick, he isn't in position in the 13 channel here, and it allows Khaleesi here an incredibly clear run once Barrett drops it, nobody even nudging him on the way. A sublime tackle by Mwanga, the only thing preventing Sia from scoring what could have been one of the most famous tries of all time, a try that would be shown 100 years down the road. All from Pollard being acutely aware which New Zealand players were in position versus which players were chasing for the box. Rugby has seen some incredible talents over the last 200 years. An average pub chat or an afternoon lost on all.rugby will show you hundreds of thousands of guys and girls with grace, gumption, handsome hands and silk in the soles of their shoes. Barry John, Finn Russell, Cheslin Colby, Portia Woodman, Juan Martin Hernandez, Dan Carter, Katie Daly McLean, Tom Haberfield. Players destined to be remembered in hearts and minds, celebrated and champions for so long as the people that watch them's memory lasts. There is, however, a far rarer group of greats. Those destined to be remembered not in the hearts and minds, but in the black and white. Players made for the record books, for the trophy engravings, for the list of winners and never losers. And whilst he might not slot effortlessly into the first group, it's going to be a long time before history throws up another player quite so capable of winning his way into rugby's eternal history books as Handre Pollard.
Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. That was Rugby. Rugby happened in it. The video on the final, on the 2023 Rugby World Cup final, is now back online finally after a very long time, after 6 odd months.
We just really wanted to talk about South Africa being good.
Yeah.
We just missed it, you know.
I had another excuse to do it now that, we're able to look over the clips of the final and semi-final, and fingers crossed this all stays there. Speaking of things that went well for South Africa, we went and spoke to England scrum coach Tom Harrison. Huge thanks to the RFU and to even Steve Borthwick, the likes of Tim and Billy and so on at the RFU and Tom himself. That's going to be coming in the next week or so.
It's a very insightful chat about scrums. If you are like myself or yourself, big fans of rugby, big nerds about rugby, but have never really understood what goes on at the scrum, slightly tune out when the scrum's on there and go like, I'll start paying attention when the ball's at 8 feet. Really interesting. It's exactly for you.
Amazing.
It's to help you understand what's going on in the front five.
Phenomenal guide to what goes on at a scrum, what happens at a scrum, what to look out for in a scrum. Has changed how I've watched scrum since we had the chat. So, yeah, brilliant stuff. Hopefully that's coming very soon. We've got another secret surprise as well coming up very soon. We accidentally ended up doing something quite cool that'll be along the way in lines. We're also going to look at some other teams, look at some club stuff again, and more stuff, because you know what I would say it all is?
Ooh! Rugby?
Agreed.
That's well done, South Africa.